first of all, what did you get paid an hour last year? So what did you make last year? And if you divided it by 2,000 hours, roughly, because there's about, most, in the employment world, you work about 2,000 hours a year. If you're, do you all interview people? I know the mortgage brokers do, and I do as a realtor, and some of my colleagues do, but most realtors I know don't ask these questions. They think any financial questions, I should ship it off to the mortgage. Phone or Ruth, right? She'll answer all the questions, which is a good idea, but I mean, you should ask some questions so you don't send duds over to her, right? I mean, if you ask a few questions, like I always ask people, how much do you make? And you ask that question to people, sometimes they say, well, I make 30 bucks an hour, right? Like if you're talking to some of the guys, a tradesman, right? You might say I make 30, 40, right? Well, you should be able to do that math in your head real quick. Somebody makes 30 bucks an hour, how much a year is that? 60 grand. 40 bucks an hour, 80 grand. So if you made 80 grand, you made 40 bucks an hour. But if you want to make, I mean, in our office last year, REMAX all across the board, average agent made a little over 200,000 in commissions. That was our average. Now, just whether you think that's good or bad, I can tell you there's only a 2 or 3 or 4. There's only a few offices that we compete with in the valley that would have those kind of numbers. Our colleagues down the road there in Langley, REMAX Treeland, they'd have similar numbers. But if you took the rest of the brokerages in the valley, they would never, first of all, if you ask that question, they wouldn't know the answer. It's not a stat they track. It's not something they do religiously at the end of the year. They don't want to know that number. And the reason they don't want to know that number, because I can tell you right now, I crunch their numbers. When I interview agents from other companies, I crunch their numbers before I meet them. And I know that they're lucky if they're at 60, 70, 40, 50. That's their average in the brokerage, 1,000 a year. That's what the average agent made there. All the commissions divided by all the agents. Anybody know what the average lawyer made last year?
I said 26 grand.
Anybody agree with him, or is he nuts? No, it's in between. The average lawyer last year made about 35,000, 35 to 40,000. Average realtor made less than 30,000, like right across the province. Average realtor made less than 30,000. Matter of fact, there's a set of stats that you can get on the Toronto Real Estate Board. I don't know if we have a public stat for all of British Columbia from BCRA, but the Toronto Real Estate Board, which is if you have a big enough sampling of people in any industry, business, in any country, it's probably true no matter where you go, right? Is it a fair statement? So the Toronto Real Estate Board is the largest board in the world. It has 48,000 realtors. Wow. Toronto Real Estate Board, largest board in the world, never mind in Canada. I mean, they just about have half the realtors in Canada is in the Toronto board. Okay? So 48,000 realtors on the board, less than 33% of them. 33% of them made nothing. Over 15,000 didn't do a single transaction. Then the stats you can track. Okay, so how many they track? So how many did one transaction? Over 8,000 did one deal in the Toronto board. So I can tell you that if you took those stats and you extrapolated them on a ratio basis, right, and applied them to any real estate board, it'd be pretty close. Yeah. It'd be pretty close. In our board, in our board, it is about 15% that did nothing. In the Fraser Valley board. Vancouver board, I think, is actually higher.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Vancouver board is even a little bit higher. That did nothing. And then if you went up the same way, the percentages would be almost the same. So that's why when I say, because sometimes I'll say, the average realtor in the province made less than 30,000. People look at me like, really? That's right. Listen, if you want to make money, become a mortgage broker. Are you hiring?
We're always hiring.
Okay, if you guys want to make money, talk to my buddy in the back, right? Because the average, does anybody know, Harmon, do you know what the average mortgage broker made last year?
I say 60.
How about you mortgage brokers? Does anybody know what the average mortgage broker in the province made last year?
I'd see the number probably north of 150.
Ooh, you were such a, they're going to elect you to be the head of all mortgage brokers in the country. Like you're,
I can speak to our market.
okay, he's not thinking average. He's just going like in our company, that's what they get paid. You know, like no. I was trying to get the average. It's not that high. It's like about, but it is 50-some thousand. It is probably like about 55,000, the average mortgage broker. So if you guys, they're hiring. So if you don't, if you're thinking you're going to end up being an average realtor this year, quit now, quick, and goes. You're hiring, right, Mark? Yeah, he's looking for people. He won't hire all you realtors because he knows how you are. I'll put in a good word for you, okay? Come here. I mean, see, I know him. I'll put in a good word for you, okay? Anyway, that number at the top of the page, you should fill it in if you're going to build a plan. What's your hourly rate going to be? So if you're thinking, if you're working backwards and you're thinking, look, I want to make 200,000. I want to make 150,000. I know what number you want to make, but if you want to make 200,000, 300,000, just do the math. You want to make 100,000, that's $50 an hour. You want to make 200,000, that's $100 an hour. How much an hour is that? $500 an hour. Now, that is totally doable in this marketplace. Just do the math. What's the average? What's the average transaction side in this area pay? The side, every average transaction side. How much does it pay? 10,000. Let's work with 10. It's an easy number. Okay, so 10,000. Divide 10,000 into a million. How many sides is that? 100 sides. So 100 sides is not outside of your reach. Especially if you say to yourself, you know what? Okay, if you did 5 last year, sides, or 10 transaction sides, you're not going to go from 5 or 10 to 100. Does that make sense? The reason I did 100 on average for 15 years, my first year I did 50. So you might have to put a little muscle on yourself, which is mostly between your ears. Like, don't look so serious when I say that. That's where you need to build the muscle, right? Most of the muscle you need is between your ears. Your belief system is skewed. You've hung around so long with people who think low of themselves, you start to think like them. Probably your family members, your best buddies, people you hang out with. Like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Your production, your thinking, everything else. So if you're hanging with people that are thinking that way, and everybody says negative things about being progressive, right? You're affected. So you're going to have to kind of have limited associations with those kinds of people that think like that, because if you're planning to change your thinking, and to be realistic, I can tell you this, I've done enough work with enough people to know that it's usually pretty hard for human beings to think double what they made last year. If I can get you to think double what you made last year. I mean, people come in, I work with them, several. I had a guy a while back, I asked him how much he was making, and this was like quite a while back. When I first came to the Valley, I met a guy, talked to him, and I laughed at him, just to get him thinking. Not to make fun of them, but just to get him thinking. I said, are you kidding me? You're making $250,000 in commissions in this marketplace. I was making $250,000 in commission in a marketplace with not even anywhere near the value. You know what I'm saying? I said, the only reason you're telling me you're making $250 is because you don't know what the heck you're doing. Imagine if you tweaked what you were doing and you just improved what you're doing, you could double it, and he doubled it in 1 year. And it's not a one-off case. See, if it was a one-off case, you say, well, I can give you example after example where I challenge guys and said, look, just tweak what you're doing. Let's make some kind of a plan, and let's go to work. And that's what you have in your hand today. So this is a working document if I can get you to tweak that number. So Daisy, if you want to put that number down, girl, it's better than putting a low number. What would be wrong? Okay, my buddy there that I was helping the first year when I started working with him, in his first year he went from 250 to 5. So second year he's going, I'm going to make $1 million next year. And I said to him, I said, well, I'm not going to say you can't, but I'm going to say it's going to be a stretch. It's going to be tough sledding. And he did make a lot of changes, but he didn't quite make it. But the good news was, he only made $950. You know what I'm saying?